I'm Floyd Wooderson. Welcome to another session of my personal memoir, Wolves of Hemp Street. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those bell notifications to make sure that you don't miss new chapters being uploaded weekly. Thank you for having integrity and tuning in. Chapter 16. One-Way Street. The town was dry. Everywhere I checked and everyone I called was out. Even my main plug said that they were waiting on a new shipment to come in. When I lived in a small college town in Kansas, a lot of the time I had to resort to resin hits or leftover roaches put into bong bowls. The struggle was real for poor college students in a town that was a geographical oddity. I hadn't smoked in more than a week, so when I got the call from my normal dude, I was excited. "Yeah, so we have some coming in from Colorado, but it won't be here for another hour or two," my buddy explained. I told him that it was worth it, so I employed his roommate to come by and swoop me up to wait it out at their place. They lived close, only about 7 blocks away. Whenever I would buy from them, I would always take a back street that dropped me off right by my house. That is, so I could avoid the parallel main road. This back road is the same way we took after I was picked up. Getting to the house was the same as any other time. "What's up, Floyd? How you doin', man?" We all knew each other quite well, smoked together on numerous occasions, partied, etc. They knew I was trustworthy and a good friend, as I was the only friend there when their source showed up with pot. My buddy was on the lower end of the drug dealer hierarchy, while the person coming in handled much bigger quantities and didn't sell nickel and dime packs. I think my buddy wanted his source to stay a secret for numerous reasons, but mostly so he wouldn't be circumvented. After about an hour of Call of Duty and a beer or two, the package arrived. I was caught off guard when 2 girls, around our age, came in with a puffed-out black duffel bag. Not who I expected, but they had my respect. They had literally just driven in from out west and had come straight to the house. The lot of us, about 7 or 8 of us to be exact, went up into one of the bedrooms as we waited for business transactions to begin. But the main girl seemed nervous. She eventually alluded to the fact that she didn't expect so many people for this. Really, it was singling me out. Everyone else lived there. But I understood her hesitancy as soon as she unzipped the duffel. She reached inside and started to pull out the biggest stash of weed I had ever seen at that time. Each strain was vacuum sealed into sections that were a quarter pound each, and there were 12 of them. White Widow, Train Wreck, Blue Dream, Sour Diesel, Cheese, and many other classic strains started appearing. I think everyone in the room was in awe of the sheer magnitude of dank that was appearing out of this seemingly bottomless bag. And then proper business was conducted. In round-robin fashion, she went from person to see what they wanted and proceeded to divvy out the weed. Now, again, being a broke college student, I was only there to buy an eighth, but I didn't want to feel like an idiot. She regularly sold QPs or ounces, which is what my buddy bought from her. But I decided to step up just one notch, yes, just one notch, and buy a quarter ounce. $60 poorer, I was now the owner of a quarter of White Widow, the mystical unicorn of cannabis that was only ever talked about and salivated over. I had never had it before. Actually, most of us hadn't. As proper cannabis etiquette, especially in a group of stoners, someone blurted out, "Hey, let's all throw in a little and roll a couple blunts." Without hesitation, everyone picked out a decent-sized nug and threw it in the middle. The best 2 rollers, not me, went to work, and before we knew it we were all immersed in plumes of marijuana smoke, laughter, and music. It was a rap vibe kind of house, so J. Cole, Kid Cudi, Lil Wayne, and Wiz Khalifa were the soundtrack for the next hour or so. But it was starting to get late, I was antsy, and I wanted to get home. I guess I hadn't been thinking when I asked to be picked up. All I knew is that if I would have smoked, which I did, and drove, no matter the short distance, it wouldn't be worth the risk. But now I put myself in a pickle. My buddies there weren't going to leave the comfort of their home, and I didn't want to walk 30 minutes home with the air flirting with below freezing temperatures. Lyft and Uber weren't a thing yet, and the sole taxi cab in town was never used. I had no choice. I asked the girls. In my current giddy and loving state, it all seemed fine and dandy for them to give me a lift. They didn't mind but informed me that they needed to make a stop first. I said, "Hey, I'm along for the ride, let's do this." I don't know why it didn't cross my mind at first, but then I slowly started to connect the dots, and the well-documented weed paranoia kicked in. "Floyd, what are you doing, man? You just met these chicks an hour ago and now you're in the car with them as they are doing a drop." And of course, the drop had to be way out on the other side of town. To make matters worse, we were literally the only ones on the road. I hated that. Scared me crapless. If I had a choice to drive around with pounds of weed in my trunk, you think I would choose to do it at that time of night? Man, hell nah. I think this is a one-way, I said as we took a right down the only one-way street in the town. Oh really? Was it? Oopsies, hee, the girls giggled. Oh my god. I'm going to prison tonight. I'm an accomplice to this because I'm guilty by association. There is no way we are going to continue to roam these streets and not get caught. I mean, she just went down a one-way street and said oopsies. I'm so screwed. I am so screwed. I don't know how I kept so calm with all of this inner dialogue going on. I mean, everything seemed to be leading down a bad path. If this were a movie, everyone could guess where it was heading. How often in movies does a purely innocent human get thrown in prison for nothing? All the damn time. But that didn't happen. I kept my cool, we didn't encounter any other cars on the road, and when they pulled up to my house, I quickly got out and ran inside. I wanted no part in that anymore. I went straight up to my room and hid my weed in the far corners of my room, never to be found. I then turned off my lights, lay in bed, and looked out the window to the street, anticipating something that never happened. No cops were coming, and I wasn't going to jail. I slowly but surely drifted off into a weed lucid dream, safe from the real world. Chapter 17. Transport. Who knew that less than a decade later I would be participating in transports and drops of my own? This time it would be with much larger quantities of cannabis than had been in the car that anxiety-ridden night. No, this wasn't marijuana. But even being its cousin, and with the sheer amount that we had in the back of the box truck, was worth far more than those measly 3 or 4 pounds of herb. Yes, I was better protected by the law, in theory, but that doesn't take away from the nervousness I felt. Teddy and I were on our way to an extractor about a half hour away from the farm with at least 600 pounds of plant product packed into super sacks in the rear. We were fulfilling the first transport of many. In order to have the content received by the extractors, the plants needed to be shucked. For those not familiar with farming and processing terms, shucking is pretty much the preliminary step in the processing of plant material after drying. Either that or trimming it into fine nugs to be smoked, like you would with weed. There is a whole argument on wet, freshly cut plant, versus dry trimming, but we will save that for another day. When shucking, one would need a pair of strong gloves that will withstand a beating, as the process involves grabbing around the base of each branch of a whole plant and stripping the buds, leaving the plant bare as a winter tree. The buds would be stripped into a super sack, along with some twigs, leaves, and seeds. This is what is called biomass. Having the random extras in the sacks with the buds made no difference. Actually, it was important for compliance. But all of the biomass was to be extracted anyway. Depending on the size of the plant, one could usually shuck it in a minute or two. On any given day, if that was one's only task, they could shuck around 100 or more plants. How many pounds that would equate to was dependent on many factors, but for conservative measures we could say around 50 pounds per person a day. So when we needed 600 pounds to take to the extractor, with a crew of 10, we could have that in 2 days. Definitely a labor-intensive project. Next is what the extractors do. They will then take the shucked product and, with multiple methods at their disposal, can extract the CBD from the plant to later be processed into crude oil, concentrates, or isolates. There are many processes and levels of refinement, with crude oil being the least refined and with an amount of around 65 to 85% CBD content. Concentrates are the next in line, with a more refined product and around 85 to 95% CBD content. Isolate, which is actually in powdered form and looks like baking soda, is 95% and above. Whenever the product is finished, it will be formulated and packaged for selling. A prime example would be tinctures. Vests on, shotguns and pistols loaded, and all of the proper paperwork in hand, Teddy and I were on our way down for the drop-off. On the drive there, I couldn't help but think that Teddy and I resembled a duo about ready to partake in a heist. Like we were about ready to meet up with Robert De Niro, Ben Affleck, and Patrick Swayze for the exchange. The irony was, we were the ones protecting from a heist. I thought of all of the popular heist movies and scenes like from Heat, The Town, or Point Break and thought to myself, am I about ready to be involved in one of those epic shootouts? I tried not to romanticize it, but this was my first time doing a transport like this. I truly had no idea what to expect. Were people really following us and planning to intercept? Probably not, but in this day and age, you never know. People seem to be getting more and more desperate. We rocked up to the facility, no De Niro or Swayze in sight, but we were greeted by one of Julian's good friends who was production manager of the place. He was the master extractor and buyer of the hemp. I saw his smile building as we got out of the truck looking like a SWAT team without the team. He was a veteran, so it didn't frighten him one bit, can't remember what branch he'd been in, but he was a badass. Basically a big, nice teddy bear then. But back in the day, I'm sure he was no one to mess with. "Our hemp's not gettin' stolen today, huh?" he joked. "No way in hell. Too much riding on this to take any chances from some punks," Teddy responded. "I getcha, man. Crazy world we live in, glad y'all are prepared. Anyways, hang tight, I'll grab the forklift and help you unload." Although this kind gentleman wasn't really put off by the gear we were wearing, everyone else in the building was taken by surprise. I'm sure some of their hearts dropped at the sight of us, and rightfully so. With the political climate and fears of mass shootings in the back of everyone's mind, I could understand. We looked frightening to those unprepared, but it meant we were doing our job. Half of the work is intimidation. Even though these weren't the ones who we should be worried about, word of mouth would spread. The gentleman returned with the forklift, helped unload the heavy bags, recorded the weight of each bag, signed mutual paperwork, and we were on our way back within 30 minutes of arriving. We could now let our hair down and relax on the ride back to town. It's always good to get the first one done of something, get rid of those butterflies in your stomach. It remains relevant in all aspects of life. It was a relief to get the first transport out of the way, as I would learn from Teddy how the transaction should take place, and in the future I would participate in a couple more with him and one with Hunter. They went by without hiccups. But other security companies weren't as lucky. No, we weren't the only ones out there. In fact, one security company made national news. In January 2019, the same time we started, 4 men had gotten arrested and their truck impounded in Oklahoma. According to the story, a semi-truck that was being followed closely by a white van had run a red light in front of a police officer. The caravan was pulled over and searched due to the strong odor of what was believed to be marijuana. 18,000 pounds of it. The gentlemen had all of the proper paperwork proving that they were in transit from Kentucky to Colorado with hemp, not marijuana. Due to confusion and maybe lack of faith, the police arrested the 4 men and charged them with 2 felonies, aggravated trafficking and felony firearm, 9mm pistol. They were cooperative and explained their case, but were still held until their bail was reached several days later. The individual receiving the hemp was understandably upset that he wasn't receiving his product and argued that it was indeed hemp being used for extraction. With no ground to really stand on, months later the charges were dropped, and all 4 men were cleared. But it wasn't before the hemp industry community voiced their opinion on the matter. To put it bluntly, they weren't happy about the situation and fought for the charges to be dropped before they indeed were. This is not supposed to be a jab at law enforcement. In fact, I very much respect law enforcement. To be fair, for an average Joe who doesn't know much about the cannabis plant, it is damn near impossible to tell the difference between marijuana and hemp. Some cannabis connoisseurs may differ, but there is one thing that absolutely is a constant. Smell. High-quality hemp smells very much like high-quality marijuana. It could very well confuse an officer, especially when hemp farming had been legal no more than a few weeks. It was a whole new world. But as adrenaline-fueled as the transport and security life was, I was being pulled in another direction. I wanted more from this thrilling industry. I wanted to utilize my college degree. I wanted to make more money. So I started to put in time toward learning the business behind the scenes. I was ready to apply myself and to help the companies that took me under their wing grow. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that bell notification to be reminded when new chapters are posted each week. And until next time, don't forget to have integrity.